On a rainy spring night in 2024, deputies from the Scott County Sheriff's Office responded to a car crash 7 miles north of downtown Davenport, Iowa. A driver had collided with a pole, but fortunately, no one was hurt. What initially seemed like a routine case of driving under the influence soon unraveled into something far more sinister. As the driver began sobering up, his fragmented memories resurfaced, and the disturbing truth he shared left deputies horrified. Today's case takes us back to Iowa, where an unexpected turn of events led authorities to a gruesome crime scene in the Parkview apartment complex. While no one can say for certain what transpired within that apartment in the spring of 2024, prosecutors believe the accused revealed just enough to reconstruct the chilling sequence of events. Let's examine what happened at 1:47 a.m. on March 13, 2024. Lieutenant Thomas Leonard of the Scott County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to a crash site near the entrance of Davenport Municipal Airport. A caller had reported that a silver Impala had struck a concrete median before slamming into a light pole. Upon arrival, Lieutenant Leonard found the driver regaining consciousness. Though physically unharmed, the man was incoherent, and the strong scent of alcohol filled the air around him and the vehicle.
Buddy, can you look at me? Are you alright?
Yeah.
You're in an accident. Do you know that?
No.
Where were you heading to? Do you know where you're at all or anything?
Yeah, I was on the auditorium.
Wait, where were you heading, you think?
The auditorium.
The auditorium?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Chris Ian.
Chris?
Chris
Ian?
Chris Levy.
Oh, okay.
The driver, identified as 31-year-old Christopher Beal, a local resident, was unable to explain where he was or where he had come from. At one point, he even suggested that he was at a hospital.
But you say you don't remember where you were coming from?
Nope.
Not at all?
Nope.
Girlfriend's house, your house, anybody's house?
Not really sure.
Okay. So do you know where you're at right now?
Hospital, I'm pretty sure.
Your hospital is where you're thinking at?
That's I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You're over by the airport.
Oh, okay.
Do you know how you got there?
Nope.
No? Okay. Alright. He said his name's Chris? Yeah.
As Lieutenant Leonard assessed the situation, he scanned the interior of the vehicle. There were no visible liquor bottles or drug paraphernalia, but something concerning caught his eye: a knife lying near Chris's bare feet.
So where are you bleeding at down here? Your foot's all got blood on it. Where's your shoes at? Do you know where your shoes are at?
No.
Okay. Did you just jump in the vehicle from...
Yeah.
Where'd you leave from then?
Not sure.
Not sure? Alright. When you get... why is there's a knife down by your foot, so I want to make sure I move that, okay? So.
Rain poured down heavily, carried by strong winds. As the lieutenant removed the knife and placed it on the car, the rain rinsed away a troubling sight: blood on the blade. Chris had a small cut on his side, but officers on the scene speculated it was accidental. At that moment, there was no reason to suspect anything more. Running the vehicle's registration, deputies confirmed that Chris Beal was the owner. His listed address led them to the Crestview apartment complex in Parkview, where he lived with his girlfriend, 31-year-old Taylor Escontrias.
Sheriff's Office.
Deputy Turner knocked on their apartment door, but no one answered. There were no sounds from inside, and when Taylor's phone number was called, it went unanswered. From the outside, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. With no immediate cause for concern, the deputy did not enter the apartment. Instead, he returned to Davenport, where Chris was taken to a hospital for minor injuries and what was suspected to be excessive alcohol consumption. While at the hospital, Chris was read his rights, and a sobriety test was conducted. The deputy performed a vertical gaze nystagmus (VGN) test, observing Chris's eye movements for signs of impairment.
Just keep your head still and look straight at my finger, okay? You think that's about a foot away from your face? Give or take a couple inches.
At first, Chris found it challenging to keep his head still as instructed.
Keep your head still for me.
Initially struggling to follow instructions, Chris eventually complied, and the results pointed to inebriation. A blood alcohol test later confirmed a level of 0.3, well over the legal limit of 0.08. Doctors found no significant injuries, no head trauma, and no signs of a concussion. His diagnosis? Severe alcohol intoxication, a minor cut, and slightly low potassium levels.
You know how you... So there was a knife. I know you just... Sorry, I'm getting... My ears getting...
There was a knife, and I don't really know how it got in the car, but like I know there was a reason why it was in the car.
Yeah.
But it was...
Though Chris's communication improved, his memory remained clouded. When Deputy Turner questioned him about the knife, Chris began asking his own questions. Was there blood on his hands when they brought him in? Had the deputy checked on Taylor? He insisted that she wouldn't have answered in the middle of the night, but then urged officers to return to the apartment to see if she was alive.
Okay, that's why I really need to ask you. I need to make sure she was alive.
We went there and knocked and she didn't answer. We know the door code and everything. Thank you. What makes you concerned that she's not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Something in my mind makes me feel like I did something. I don't think I would have ever done anything like that to her. Because I'm not like that.
Were you guys having a fight earlier today?
No.
Okay.
But
Is it just kind of some thoughts you're having just because we know she didn't answer yet?
I'm really fucking scared that I have these pictures in my head that like I beat her with a baseball bat.
Okay.
And like I know that's incriminating myself, but
Well, at this point it's for the safety of everyone involved.
I need to make sure that she's okay.
Nope, I can send another deputy up there to see if we can go check for her, okay? Let me get a hold of my boss and just have him go up there and check on her. I'm sure she's okay.
You good? What's going on?
He might have killed his girlfriend. I don't know yet.
What do you mean? What?
He just told me he said, I need to know if she's alive. I said, what are you talking about? We just tried to go knock. He gave me his address and the door code. Hang on. He said he gave me the address and the door code, and he said images are going through my head of me beating her to death with a baseball bat.
Lieutenant Leonard met Deputy Turner back at the Crestview Apartments. This time, they tried the door to Unit 4 and found it unlocked. However, something was blocking the entrance from the inside. As they pushed their way in, they discovered Taylor's lifeless body near the threshold. She had been the victim of a brutal attack. The horrifying scene revealed Taylor had suffered nearly 60 wounds from 3 different weapons: a bat, a knife, and a screwdriver. The struggle had not been confined to one area. Evidence of the attack was found in the hallway, kitchen, living room, and finally, at the doorway where she was discovered. A bloodied baseball bat rested on the couch, the tip of a screwdriver lay near the kitchen sink, and the knife, already partially cleansed by the rain, was later confirmed through DNA testing to have Taylor's blood on it. Taylor was the daughter of Michael McKee and Lisa Rosenberg. She was born and raised in Davenport, Iowa, and attended Rockridge High School. A devoted mother to her 2 children, Ella and Julian, Taylor was known for her kind heart, vibrant personality, and artistic abilities. Her mother fondly described her as amazing, full of energy, and truly one of a kind. Family members also remembered Taylor for her honesty, love of laughter, and passion for cooking. She cherished spending time with her loved ones. However, throughout her adult life, Taylor battled addiction. It was during her recovery that she met Christopher Beal, a machine operator from Davenport who was only sporadically employed. Their paths crossed at Country Oaks, a rehabilitation center in Buffalo, where both were undergoing treatment for alcohol addiction. As they attended daily recovery sessions together, their friendship deepened and eventually turned into a romantic relationship. In October 2023, they publicly announced they were a couple, and the day after completing their program at Country Oaks, they moved in together. Unfortunately, both Taylor and Chris relapsed, returning to drinking inside their Crestview apartment. Detectives found only a few clues hinting at what had occurred in the moments leading up to Taylor's brutal attack. The living room and kitchen area appeared undisturbed, and much of the apartment showed no obvious signs of violence. A spare room contained storage bins and miscellaneous items, while the bedroom closets held little of significance. Nightstands had a few objects on them, and a bag rested on the floor. The bathroom showed no evidence of a cleanup. However, in the main bedroom, an empty gallon bottle of Hawkeye vodka was found beside a pillow on the bed. A faint blood stain was visible on the top sheet, likely a transfer mark, possibly from a finger. The vodka bottle's cap, along with Chris's cell phone, was also on the bed. Taylor's phone, however, was discovered in the kitchen. On the night of her death, Taylor reached out to 2 friends via Facebook Messenger. She contacted Michael Holland, asking if he could pick her up, a favor he had done for her multiple times before. That evening, Michael spoke with Taylor and noted that she sounded distressed. He suspected she had been drinking. However, since he had also consumed alcohol, he chose not to drive. Instead, he attempted to book an Uber for her, but the $150 fare was too expensive. Before hanging up, he promised to pick her up the following day. When Taylor never called to confirm their plan, he assumed something was wrong. Later that afternoon, he learned of her tragic fate. Taylor's second plea for help was sent after 11 p.m. to an old high school classmate, Nick Seaman. In her chilling message, she wrote, "If I get killed, it was Chris." She then added, "Don't reply right now. He's nuts." However, Nick didn't see the message until the next morning at around 7 a.m. Tragically, despite sensing danger, Taylor never called 911. Christopher Beal was taken into custody while still at the hospital. After being processed, he was brought to the police station where detectives began questioning him. By the time the interrogation started, he was sober. Despite not having an attorney present, Chris started to recount his memories, although his recollections were disjointed. Over several hours, he provided 2 different versions of the events. In one version, he described how he and Taylor were playing a card game called Garbage when she began to have what he referred to as an emotional breakdown. He said he was able to calm her down, and they both laid down on the bed to talk. In this version, Chris could not remember anything between their conversation in the bedroom and the attack at the doorway with the baseball bat.
And then we both kind of laid down, and then she started freaking out again. And she went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, came in the bedroom. I don't know what she was doing with it at first, and she was just kind of freaking out. I tried to take it from her, and then she ran out of the kids' living room. And I don't know how much of this next part is true or false, but I remember grabbing the baseball bat and hitting her with it. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what happened from the time that we went to bed to the time that I hit her with the baseball bat. We came inside and we were talking. We lay down, we were still talking. And the next thing I remember is hitting her with a baseball bat.
He couldn't remember the exact order of events, only scattered fragments. When it was over, he simply walked away.
All I know is I think I was debating about just going and laying down or grabbing my keys and leaving, so I must have grabbed my keys and left, and that's the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital.
Chris couldn't explain to detectives what had triggered the attack on Taylor. However, he admitted that the couple had issues and that Taylor often made him feel awful.
She always kind of made it seem like I wasn't a part of this relationship, and she had said earlier that day that it's a one-sided relationship. And she always talks shit and, you know, makes me feel like shit, but I loved her, you know, so I just was trying to work on things with her.
Detectives left Chris alone in the room for a while as they strategized and determined their next steps. His account so far didn't align with the evidence at the scene. particularly the clues found in the kitchen and hallway, which indicated that the attack had begun elsewhere and progressed through the apartment before ending at the doorway. Chris only recalled a brief moment involving the knife, mentioning that he had been cut on the side. However, he had no memory of a screwdriver at all.
Drinking has ruined my entire life. Why would have ever fucking killed her? Obviously because of the alcohol. But why? Like literally why? We drank I don't know how many times before. I've never done this. Why now? Why would I do this?
When detectives returned, they pressed Chris to fill in the missing details. That's when he started to speculate. Maybe he had stabbed Taylor at the doorway to end her suffering after the initial attack had escalated too far. He suggested that this might have been what happened, though most of his memory from that night was a haze. The next thing he clearly remembered was waking up in the hospital.
Have you remembered anything else while you've been sitting here? I wish I could. I don't know what the fuck happened, why it happened. To believe everything that you've said. There's just still a couple of things that aren't really lining up. So there's multiple stabbings that are not just the knife. Okay. Is there any reason that there would be any blood on anything else other than a knife? In the baseball bat. A knife in the baseball bat. Other than that, I have no idea. I have no reason to believe there would be, but I couldn't tell you because I have no idea. About a screwdriver. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I couldn't tell you. I honestly don't remember anything about a screwdriver.
Christopher Beale stood trial for first-degree murder, a charge that required the state to prove he had acted with malice and premeditation. His defense did not dispute the core facts. He had killed Taylor. The medical examiner determined that one of the many blows she suffered had been fatal, though it was unclear which one. However, Chris claimed he had been blackout drunk at the time. His legal team argued that he lacked the mental capacity to form intent or premeditation due to his extreme intoxication. Ultimately, it was up to the jury to decide whether he was guilty of first-degree murder. In an unusual and arguably unnecessary analogy, public defender Lean Strigel began her opening statement by recounting the life story of Tina Turner. She explained Tina's decision not to attend her mother's funeral, not because she lacked love or respect for her mother, but for the exact opposite reason. The stretched comparison was meant to illustrate that determining intent behind an action is complex, though how it applied to Chris's case remained unclear.
One of the state's requirements is to prove the intention of Mr. Beale. Intention is very difficult to prove. Getting inside this mind of somebody. Just like getting inside of the mind of Tina Turner and why she would choose not to go to her mother's funeral.
The absence of evidence showing that Chris planned the murder or attempted to cover it up did not mean he hadn't considered his actions. Furthermore, he didn't need to remember committing the crime to be convicted. The sheer number of injuries Taylor suffered demonstrated the prolonged nature of the attack, providing multiple opportunities for Chris to stop. Each wound was the result of a conscious decision. The jury could also infer malice and deliberation from his use of 3 different weapons: a bat, a knife, and a screwdriver. While all of these items were found within the apartment, he still had to switch weapons at least twice, showing an escalation of violence. Additionally, physical evidence indicated that the attack took place in multiple areas of the apartment, requiring Chris to move from one location to another. These movements further supported the idea that the murder was intentional. Afterward, he had the awareness to leave the crime scene, further suggesting that he understood what he had done. Dr. Dennis Kleen, the medical examiner who conducted Taylor's autopsy, testified that her cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries. 2 contrasting interpretations emerged from his testimony. The prosecution argued that Taylor's death resulted from the cumulative effects of her injuries. Though the doctor couldn't determine which specific blow had been fatal, The state emphasized the knife wounds, which Chris himself had speculated were the final ones inflicted near the doorway. However, the defense highlighted another aspect of Dr. Clean's testimony. Some of Taylor's impact injuries could have been caused by a fall. There was no medical way to rule this out. Additionally, Taylor's toxicology report revealed a blood alcohol level of 0.338, which would have made her physically unsteady. The defense argued that a single initial blow could have been fatal, making all subsequent injuries irrelevant to the murder charge. If Taylor had already been dying or unconscious, the intent behind each additional strike would also be meaningless. Chris took the stand in his own defense, his best, and perhaps only chance to frame the killing as a crime of passion rather than premeditation. Under oath, he altered his story yet again. He now claimed he had no memory of using the knife, despite previously speculating about why he had done so in his interrogation. 1 year after the murder, Chris had seemingly forgotten key details of the crime.
The last thing that I remember is laying down to go to bed with her. Or not laying down to go to bed, but laying down in bed talking to her is the last thing that I consciously remember doing.
You said you remember Taylor getting a knife, you tried to take it away from her, she sliced you or slashed you with it, and you shoved her into a wall before getting the baseball bat.
Correct.
None of that was true.
No.
You made it up.
Correct.
Okay. But you did hit Taylor with a baseball bat.
As far as memory goes, yes.
When you hit her with that bat, Taylor was facing away from you?
As far as memory I can construe sorry, I apologize. As far as my memory withstands, yes.
When you told Detective Rowling that you remembered stabbing Taylor, did you remember stabbing Taylor?
At the time, yes.
And you told Detective Rowling you couldn't say why you stabbed her?
Correct.
But you thought maybe it was because Taylor was still moving and you might as well put her out of her misery given how much damage you'd already done to her.
Correct, that was what was said.
In his closing argument, Chris's lead attorney, Miguel Pentes, presented another unusual analogy to counter the prosecution's claims. He argued that Taylor's nearly 60 injuries weren't the result of 60 separate, intentional decisions made by Chris Beall. Instead, he suggested, some actions unfold as one continuous motion, like walking or eating. In this case, however, the action in question was murder.
So I just want you to think just an activity. Any activity. Doesn't matter what it is. And the question is like, once you're in it, are you just in it? Like, are you just doing it? Or are you kind of like, are you considering, are you then contemplating and recontemplating every step in that process? We'll treat it like a walk in the park, right? Are you contemplating each step, or did you contemplate the walk and then every step is not being deliberated and is not being premeditated? That is just happening. That is in the action that you're already in. Another example is just eating food, each bite. Are you contemplating each time, or are you just doing?
Pentes concluded by asserting that the murder, in technical terms, occurred quickly. He pointed out that the evidence in the apartment suggested the attack had begun in the kitchen. He argued that there was no clear sign that Taylor had been moving around the apartment after that moment on her own.
I think the incident happened in the kitchen. I think she died in the kitchen. I think that that's what the evidence supports. I think it happened fast, and again, I think it happened in the kitchen. Now, any offenses that occur after someone is deceased is not murder in the first, murder in the second, voluntary or involuntary. It's just not. You can't form intent after the fact. That is a separate crime and a crime that has not been charged.
Scott County Assistant Attorney Brett Larson told the jury that there was no evidence to back up the defense's theory of the crime. On the contrary, there was plenty of evidence at the scene indicating that the murder had unfolded as the prosecution suggested. Larson pointed out that Chris's second account to detectives, when he speculated about his actions and the reasoning behind them, was telling in itself. When Chris suggested he might have stabbed Taylor to end her suffering, Larson emphasized, "That's the defendant admitting he stabbed her to put her out of her misery."
That version of events, that story, that makes sense based on the evidence you've seen in this case. It doesn't. What story does make sense? The story or what the defendant told Detective Rowling after he came clean and said, oh, the first story, I made all that up. After that point, what the defendant told you was what happened. That story matches up with the physical evidence that we see on scene.
The jury delivered their verdict after deliberating for under 2 hours.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of domestic abuse, assault with the intent to inflict serious injury. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your service as jurors. I would assume the defense would like the jury polled.
The conviction for first-degree murder carries an automatic life sentence without the possibility of parole. Christopher Beal is set to be sentenced on May 30th, 2025, during a hearing where 2 family members, including Taylor's mother, Lisa, are expected to give impact statements.
Taylor was talking to us up there. She was helping us through this. So I believe that everybody's made the right choice here. Justice has prevailed, and that's what we wanted for our little girl.